Good evening, Florida Panthers fans. Welcome to the Fifth Line Florida Panthers show. I'm David Eversole, joined by Alex Baumgardner, and we've got Manny Chang here as well, the producer. Going to join us for about 30 minutes or so to talk some Florida Panthers. Got a lot going on with the Cats. A big weekend series with Detroit. They split the games on Friday and Saturday. A couple different games. Obviously, it was a low-scoring game last night, 2-1. They took a close loss. Offense couldn't quite get it going, but on Friday they had a real big 7-2 win over the Red Wings. So we're going to touch on a lot of the storylines with the Panthers, introduce you some of the new players that you may have started to get familiar with, and just cover all your Florida Panthers news. So, Alex, I want to start with the power play. It's been really there's been no drop off with a lot of new players coming in from last year to this, but the power play has really been impressive so far. What do you see from that unit so far this year that stands out to you?
I just think all the big boys are really clicking. Like you said, it seems like they know what they're doing. The first power play units, Huberto, Hornqvist, and Barkov with Ekblad and Yandel on the back end. I mean, even if they're not scoring, the puck movement's there. They're getting to the right places. Whether it's Huberto on the left side, you got Barkov playing down on the right. You got Hornqvist screening the goalie. I think Hornqvist is probably the real kind of hidden gem of that power play, just because there's never really been a guy to get to that front of the net, annoy goalies, annoy other teams' defenders, and it seems to work. Also, Aaron Ekblad looks unbelievable on that back end. They've been riding Keith Yandel the last couple seasons. He's been one of the top point getters on the power play for defensemen in the NHL. But I really think Aaron Ekblad's kind of stealing the show a little bit from him, kind of controlling a little bit more on that back end, and it seems to work so far.
We've been waiting for Ekblad to kind of make that leap. He's obviously was a very highly drafted player by the organization, and they've invested a lot into him. And he's always been kind of that offensive-minded defenseman. So I think what's benefited him is a lot of the new guys have, like you said, really stepped up on the power play, and it sort of let him be more of a quarterback down there, more of a facilitator, and obviously remembering his obligations as a defenseman. Because remember last year and the years before, they're giving up a lot of shorthanded goals, and I know those guys, both him and Yandel, like to pinch. They like to come down the boards and be aggressive. So I really like you're saying, with the power play, they're getting traffic in front of the goalie, and I think they're starting to be a tougher team this year. Manny, what do you think about some of these new guys they brought in as far as like the two-way players and stuff? How do you feel like those contributions are a little bit different this year, helping on the defensive end from some of these new forwards?
Well, David, let me first off saying that if they were going to give out awards for GM of the Year, without question, has to be Zito, without a shadow of a doubt. I mean, Verhaeghe, Duclair, Hornqvist. I'm having a brain fart of the forward from Tampa. I think I just said his name. Verhaeghe again. Yeah,
Right.
It's just overall, it's fitting in so well, right? And then you see the emergence of finally Ekblad being that Duncan Keith's, kind of a player that, the way that Coach Q had him playing in Chicago, right? Because you look at all those turnovers last season, right? Listen, I'm not here to bash anybody, but there's no more Mike Matheson on this team, right? There's, those guys are now gone. Like now, Coach Q has his system working, and I told Alex this on the first show ever, that with the other guys now emerging, doing the little things. Okay, yesterday, yes, the Panthers lost, but you saw Duclair trying to get in there. You once again Hornqvist on the power play. I mean, you saw the Red Wings power play. They didn't have a single person in their entire time in the whole game stand in front of the net, taking checks on the hips and trying to get in front of the goalie, right? But that's what Hornqvist does. And those are the differences that you see, that guys are willing to stick out there and they're willing to give up their bodies and they're willing to do the extra little things in order to win. So I look at a loss like yesterday, but when you look at the team overall, the forwards that have been able to come in and they've made such an immediate impact, right? And in previous seasons, right now, the Panthers wouldn't even be close to top three. Right now, they're up there. And we're not talking about slow starts. We're not talking about, where's Barkov? Where's Huberto? Ekblad is minus, his plus minus is just horrible. There's no such thing right now. It's like everything is clicking. The only thing that needs to be fixed with this team is the goaltending. To me, Drieger has outshined Bob, but yet there's still time for Bob to get in the rhythm and to be able to become that number one guy that we know that he can be. But as far as your question is, I mean, it's been unbelievable to see what Verhaeghe, Duclair, and Horquist have been able to do so far for this team. Not only when it comes to 5-on-5, but especially when you put them in the PK, put them in on the power play. You know, special teams both ways has been absolutely great to watch. And it's only, you are still only less than 25 games in or so. But yet you're facing Tampa, you're facing Carolina, you know what I'm saying? But it's those different things that Coach Q has been able to finally put in or implement by adding those new guys in. Because he went out there with Zito and they got players that he felt could fit his system. And it's unbelievable to watch right now because these guys are just fitting so well that the guys that were already here, like Huberto and Barkov and Ekblad, they're all, even Yandel. The only issue I have with Yandel, he has too many damn penalties. I mean, every other game, he at least has 4 or 5 trips, right into the box. So that's my only issue. But besides that, man, it looks wonderful to see how Mackenzie Weegar looks so comfortable in getting the puck from his back end and pushing it forward without having to, cause an icing or without having to turn it over. It's things that everything is fitting so well. But I do see it as these new players that have been collected and put on this team. You're seeing the Coach Q effect, man, and it's just something that we can say, right? I am full confidence. The Florida Panthers will make the playoffs because there's no way that you play this well so early, so fast, and you have a stumble. I'm sorry. We're not Montreal. We're not Toronto. We're not all these guys, right? To me, this system starts from the top, and Zito and Coach Q have this team playing in such a way that it's hard to see them not making it.
Yeah, exactly. And we talked about a lot of the top guys, obviously, that are making big contributions, Barkov, Huberto. But Alex, we talked about a little bit in the chat earlier, some of the guys down in the bottom 6 and 3rd and 4th lines. I've been particularly impressed by Frank Fertrano. He's really kind of found that spot on the 3rd line. Him and Tippett have seemed to pick things up a little bit lately, making some plays in the offensive zone. Fertrano, I think, has 5 goals and 5 assists so far this year. Was I reading that right earlier? But he's doing pretty well as far as like creating turnovers in the offensive zone, being physical, giving you those things that you look for on those 3rd and 4th lines to kind of just keep the physical, the tempo going, dig some loose pucks out of the board. So what are you seeing from those 3rd and 4th lines, Alex, that's impressed you?
If you look at the best teams in the NHL, they're always rolling 4 lines because you can't have your top two players like Huberto and Barkov playing 24 minutes a night as a forward. The 3rd line, the 4th line have really picked it up over the last couple of games, I think. I really like the way Luostarinen's kind of fit into that 3rd line center role. He has a lot of skill. You could see him in puck battles in the corner, one-on-one, stuff like that. He definitely has some skill to him. He's still only been playing a couple games in the NHL, so he doesn't have the experience yet, but I honestly think he's playing really good on that 3rd line. Like you said, Frank Fertrano, kind of a veteran on this team by now, oldest guy on that line, and he's not even that old. He's probably in his mid-20s right now. He's looked really good, and me and Manny have been talking about it the first couple of episodes. Owen Tippett really needs to pick it up. He has. He's definitely found what his role is in this team. He's dumping the puck in a lot more. I haven't seen him turn over the puck recently at all. So those 3 on that 3rd line looks really good. And go down to the 4th line. Ryan Longberg hasn't scored a goal in the NHL yet, but he's so quick. He's a little guy, but he'll get into the corners. He'll hit you. He'll go up against a 6'6" defenseman if he has to. They had Nola Chari. Obviously, he missed the road trip, but he was playing the last minute of the game every single time. The other team pulled the goalie. It was Barkov and it was Achari out there. So Coach Q definitely has confidence in that bottom 6. And, you have Brett Connolly. You have Juho Lammikko scored 2 goals in 2 straight games after not scoring at all the entire season. So the bottom 6 looks really good, and that really helps when you have top 6 filled with talent like Hornqvist, Huberto, Barkov, Duclair. If all 4 lines are rolling, that's what's going to help you in the playoffs, and that's what I think the Panthers are going to do.
And one thing, guys, to add there, my colleague Bill Lindsay, actually, he told me this last night when we were doing the game. He said the Panthers are averaging 30 seconds a shift. That is unbelievable. When your team can roll all 4 lines for 30 seconds in and out in a 60-minute game, especially when you play every other day, Oh man, listen, you are 100% healthy and you're doing that. The sky's the limit, to be honest with you.
Yeah, then you see the Q effect. The team is disciplined. They're in their responsibilities. They're making the right decisions. They're getting the puck out when they need to. They're handling their responsibilities in the back end. And what I'm liking is just the team is very confident offensively. You see zero hesitation, like you said. They get a lot of speed through the neutral zone. They're really flying, and they're not like a dump and chase team. I mean, this team attacks the blue line with the puck, with possession, and they're in there and they're fighting in front of the net, which I like to see, as we mentioned earlier. But let's switch to the blue line a little bit. So far, obviously, Ekblad has stood out, and Yandel's been more solid as far as like his fundamentals and his discipline. Who else on the blue line is looking good to you guys so far? You want to
I
start,
can jump
Alex?
in. I can
Yeah.
jump in right here. I think
Yeah.
Radko Gudas has been my favorite player
Oh,
on the back end.
absolutely.
He's got them hockey hands, that guy.
Radko Gudas is probably the most physical player I've seen since Nicholas Kronwall, and that's saying something. Every time an opposing player walks across the blue line, Radko Gudas is lighting them up. I mean, I've seen at least 2-3 big hits from him every single game. He's not the most offensively skilled defenseman, but that's not his role on this team. His role is to absolutely destroy people in the corner, not let anyone get to the front of the net, prevent guys from coming in. And you can see the momentum kind of change every time Radko Gudas lays a big hit. I think Ekblad's clearly picked up too. And I don't know, the defense looks all right to me. I still don't think it's amazing. Obviously, Yandel has improved a bit, but I still think he turns the puck over a little bit too much. I counted last game 4 times he turned the puck over, twice on the power play when he's trying to headman the puck up the ice. So it's a little bit challenging, but I think the defense is going to get there.
Yeah, great. And welcome to Caitlin Daly for joining us here on the Fifth Line Show. How you doing, Caitlin?
I'm good. Thanks for waiting on me, guys. Sorry about that Wi-Fi issue.
Oh, these things happen. Can you hear us okay?
Yes.
Perfect. We're just talking about the defense a little bit, so I wanted to get your taste. Just jump right in here. What are you seeing from the defensemen so far early in the season that's impressed you?
I've said it early on. I'm super impressed with the way Ekblad has been playing this season. I called it pretty early, but I think that he, might be in the running for a Norris Trophy nod. I think that he's playing the best he's ever played. I really like the way I think they've been strong. I know you're just talking about Yandel. I think I love how the defense have gotten involved in the offense and have been stepping up, and they've been playing with really 5 guys on the ice. I think Uyghur has been getting
Got a little technical difficulty there, but I know she mentioned Uyghur, and he's been really good. He's been kind of that guy that's always been a solid rotational defenseman, but I think he's really putting himself now into that top pair pretty solid. And I like what I'm seeing from him. And what do you think about the goaltending situation so far, Caitlin? Obviously, Q has been going with the hot hand. We talk about that a little bit early in the show. Drieger played the last 3, and then it was Bob 3 games before that. How do you think he was handling that balance so far? And do you think they can continue to maintain the solid play from 2 goaltenders?
I think that I've kind of gone back and forth on where I stand on this. Obviously, Drieger's had an amazing season and has really been like the backbone of the goaltending for this team. I think that last night Bob was going to be in an unfortunate position already because Detroit was going to come back so heavy after that 7-2 loss. So I think that he probably had a more aggressive Detroit team facing him and a hungrier team. But I do think that he has not been so steady with his confidence this season. Obviously, we know how much talent Bob has, but he's been shaky on when he wants to show up with it. Luckily, I like the way that Coach Q has been balancing going between both goalies because that has allowed us to have the record that we have so far. But I'd obviously like to see Bob get in a spot where
Yeah, sorry about that. I think Caitlin's having some Wi-Fi trouble there, but I agree. I think Bob is there to be number one goaltender, but it's a great luxury to have two guys that you can count on any night in net. They're to give you top goaltending play. So it's a really good luxury to have. And I think you kind of just have to defer to Q on this and just go with the hot hand right now. The thing about Bob that always frustrates me are the soft goals. The goal that it squeezes through a pad, or he's late to get to the post, or he just doesn't catch the puck for whatever reason visually. I want to see him sharp for 60 minutes, 2, 3 games in a row to where he's just like you can't get past him. You want to see that superstar elite top 3 goaltender that you're paying. So the thing about him, it's just the talent. He has a higher ceiling, but I think Drieger gives you a much higher floor and is a lot more consistent from game to game. What do you think about Alex? Do you think Bob can separate himself, or do you think this 2 goalie system is a thing now, and we should just kind of come to expect that until somebody sort of pulls ahead?
For this season, you have 56 games, so many back-to-backs, 3-game series against the same teams, such a short schedule, such a short turnaround. It's okay to go and split the goalies, 2 games here, 2 games there. A lot of teams do it. Toronto was trying to do it until their backup got hurt. Montreal still does it with Jake Allen, Carey Price. Vegas was doing it with Marc-Andre Fleury and Robert Leonard. So it's okay for now. But this team's probably going to make the playoffs. And once you get to the playoffs, you can't be doing that. You're going to have your solidified number one goalie. And from what I've seen right now, even though I thought Bob played pretty well last night, he made a couple big saves. That second period, Detroit was all over the Panthers. It easily could have been 4-5-1. But I think Drieger has looked more steady. And you need steadiness in the playoffs. Drieger probably should have been the goalie in the playing round last year. Bob didn't look bad. I thought he stood on his head for a couple of those games. But from what I've seen so far, the $10 million goalie still hasn't looked like that $10 million goalie. Last year in the playoffs, Montreal won. Carey Price absolutely stole the show against Pittsburgh. That's what you want from a guy like Bobrovsky. I don't think it's going to happen, at least from what I've seen so far. I think Chris Drieger is the guy you're going to have to go with later on into the season. But for the next 15, 20 games, we've only played 16. You can still run 7-7, 8-7, something like that. Towards the end of the season, once you're like 10 games away and you pretty much know you're in the playoffs, then you got to be like, all right, team, we're going to ride with Drieger. But if Drieger doesn't step up, Bobrovsky's going to have to step in. So that's what I see.
But Kayla, do you think that hurts Bob's confidence? Like, obviously, if he gets 3 games and then Drieger comes back in for 3, I think with Bobrovsky, it's more of a mental thing. I think with him, if he knows I'm gonna start 8 out of 9 games, and he can just kind of just get a rhythm and get into a groove as a goaltender, is that what he needs, or is he going to be okay in this 2 goalie system for a little while and maybe just build confidence as the season goes on? Where do you think he's at with the mental part of this whole 2 goalie situation that he's dealing with?
I mean, I think that's absolutely got to play a huge role in this. Being a goalie is, I think of it, my brother's a college golfer. Golf is such a mental game. Being a goalie, in my opinion, is the most mental position in hockey. And so you have to be, in a good place to be a good goalie from what I've seen. And I just think you look at what Driegs was able to do with 3 starts in a row. His confidence is at an all-time high. I'm sure Bob, who he is with his, background and his rap sheet, it's probably hard for him not knowing what's guaranteed. And like you said, not being able, if he knows he's going to start X amount of games in a row, he can get a groove in. And I think that's got to be shaking him up a little bit because nothing's guaranteed. So I think, at the same time, I think Coach Q is doing the best thing for the team at the moment because it's hard to hand over, that kind of responsibility and those starts to Bob if he can't be stable enough to deserve it.
Yeah, exactly. And it's kind of a game to game. You ride the hot hand for now. The team's winning. So I don't think you shake up the formula that's working. If you go on a 2 or 3 game skid with one guy in net, maybe you kind of switch it up a little bit. but I think time will tell, and I think the goaltending situation will gain some clarity as the season goes on. So we got a question down here from Anthony. Do you see Anton Lundell debuting this season during the regular season, during the playoffs, or waiting for next season? Alex, what's your thoughts on this?
So I've been paying attention to Lundell since he played in the World Juniors. Absolutely dominated that tournament. That was his third appearance there. He won the bronze medal with Finland as the captain. Currently with HIFK in the Liga, in the Finnish Pro League. He's over a point a game. I think he has 25 points in 24 games as a center on, I think Henrik Borgstrom's actually on that team too. I don't see him playing during the regular season just because his contract ends, I think, in April or May with HIFK. So it's probably very unlikely you see him in the regular season. I don't know how their team's looking in terms of playoffs, but the only chance you see Lundell is in the playoffs with the Panthers. And it's very unlikely you see a kid kind of jump into a role like that. He's a center. He's only 19. He'll probably be 20 by the time the playoffs comes around. And you also don't want to burn a year on his entry-level contract. You have to be careful with those things. You have Barkov and Huberdeau expiring soon. The next couple of years, you really got to manage the cap, especially when you have Bobrovsky at $10 million. I don't see Lundell coming up. Keep an eye on maybe Denisenko. I think if he progresses throughout the season in the AHL, you might see him make a game or two. But the team's flowing right now. I don't see them bringing in a teenager, at least this year. Next year, he should be in the lineup because he's dominating a men's league, but don't expect anything this year.
I don't think it's the time to rush him now. We have enough depth at the front spots. I think we're going to be okay and just let him develop and sort of let it happen organically. So the schedule ahead, the Panthers obviously have a lot of home games coming up. They're going to close out the rest of the month, in fact, with 6 straight home games. It's so crazy, like all these consecutive games against the same teams. It's not something you typically see in a professional sports league, obviously. With the back-to-back with Detroit, and then we had the 3 straight games versus Tampa, and we got 3 straight games versus Dallas. So what are your keys to this series? I'll start with you, Caitlin. Looking ahead a little bit to Dallas, first of all. What are you looking for the Cats versus the Stars in this matchup coming up?
Well, I think it was Uyghur, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was Uyghur who said this week how the Panthers actually love playing the same team back-to-back because, you get familiar, it gets emotional, it gets gritty. And as we've seen, they're a very passionate team. They like to play with a lot of intensity. So he said it brings out the best in them. So I'm excited for that. Dallas obviously has not played a game in a while. They had a little break with what's going on down there with the weather. So, this will be interesting as it's the first time we meet them this season. But I know that the Panthers are 4-0-0 after losses this season, so I'm having a pretty good feeling about Monday. And I know they love playing at home in front of the fans. They love feeding off that energy. So I have a pretty good feeling looking into this week. I think they've been very solid, through the lineup. So as long as they kind of get it together defensively and get in a better groove, then and their goaltending's a little more stable, I think that they have a good shot at taking all these games this week.
I agree. And they're getting a lot of contributions from the top all the way through the roster. Through 16 games, I was reading 16 different Panthers have scored a goal this year. So they're getting contributions from all over the place. Veterans on the team, younger guys are stepping up. And then they're going to close out with 2 games with their nemesis, Carolina. So those are always interesting, physical, tough, competitive games. I know we've had mixed success against them, but given the fact that we played really well against Tampa, we took care for the most part. I mean, the 2-1 loss really wasn't bad. We really hammered Detroit in the first game. We already beat Carolina. We're winning the games that we're supposed to win, which is really what I like to see. We're not having those bad, just losses that just totally take the air out of the team. You can live with a 2-1 loss on the back-to-back against Detroit to close out a road stand. These aren't gut, punches on these losses. And I think the team is a lot tougher mentally and physically this year. They're really starting to kind of taken the mold of Quenneville, which I love to see. And I'm really feeling that the team is starting to gel and be very cohesive. So I want to start with you, Alex. Nick, give us one player that may not be a marquee name for the team that's been a real standout so far through these first 16 games.
He's only played a couple games because he was injured, but I believe it's Gustav Forzling. He looks really good on the back end. He's probably the fastest defender on the Panthers. He jumps up in the rush. He almost scored a beautiful goal last game when he was in front of the net, turned around, and I think Jonathan Bernier got a little shoulder on the puck. But he's someone that Coach Q had in his Chicago days, picked him up on waivers, brought him over. He got injured, got right back in the lineup, and I don't think he's leaving the lineup. I was high on Noah Juleson. I still think he has a shot to probably break back into that top 6. But I really like Forsling. If you're a defenseman, watch the way he plays because he doesn't make a lot of mistakes.
Very. And how about you, Caitlin?
Sorry, I missed the question. My Wi-Fi is a little spotty. What was that?
No, just basically a player that's maybe not a household name, not a marquee name on the team, but who stood out to you so far through 16 games for the Panthers?
So lately, I have been really excited about Ryan Longberg. I think he's been with us he's played 7 games this season so far. But he had career highs against Carolina. He played 12 and a half minutes. And then the first game against Detroit, he had 21 shifts, played 14 minutes. And while he didn't put any points up that game, you could just see how hungry he was, to get someone on the team on the board. You could tell he's really hungry for his first NHL goal. But he's 5'9", 187, but he plays like he's so much bigger than that because of his passion. And he's so hungry for it. And I just love how he's meshed with, the way the Panthers play their game and how they want him to play. He never gives up on the puck. And I love his, fire out there. So I'm really excited to see what he's going to bring for the rest of the season.
Yeah. And for me, it's Lustainen. He's dropped off a little bit the last 5 games, but he had a really good start to the season. I think he gives you a good amount of size and skill up there in the center spot. He can kind of be that second, third, fourth. You can pretty much kind of plug him in anywhere from the second line down, basically. And he can sort of mesh well with different skill types on the wing position. So I like what I've seen so far, to see him pick it up a little bit more offensively. And Duclair has been just amazing. I know, obviously, he took a while to get on the score sheet finally with the Panthers, but just his energy, and he has a really good feel for the game. He always seems to kind of be one step ahead of the defense in position. He really crashes the net hard. He attacks with a lot of speed, always coming downhill. And I like his tenacity and the fact that even when the puck's not going in the back of the net, you just get that consistent effort night after night. And I know, like we said earlier in the show, those are the guys that Quenneville was looking for. And if you're not going to give it every shift, every game, then he's going to find players that are. I don't think he really cares about your stature or anything like that. I mean, this is a coach that's done it, that's proven, and he commands the respect of the team, the younger players, the veteran players alike. They're all getting in line, and you're starting to kind of see an organizational identity for the first time, I think, in quite a long time with the Panthers. I mean, they were known last year as a high scoring, kind of exciting, up tempo team, but that would just go off the deep end defensively and just give up bad goals and just bad assignment hockey and those things like that. And you're seeing much less of that. You're seeing a crisper team, a more fluid team, a team that takes less penalties. So these are all encouraging signs. So before we close it out, I want to take about 30 seconds each. So what are your thoughts on the team so far? If you want to give them a grade through the first quarter of the season, if you want to give them a letter grade, what would be your grade for the Panthers so far? Let's start with you, Caitlin.
I give him an A. I mean, I think that they have played up to the elite level that everyone was doubting that they could. And finally, they're getting the recognition that they deserve. I think that they're their talent is so deep on their bench, and their speed and just the way that they all work with each other. And Coach Q knowing like you can, last night in the middle of the game, he switched the lines up and like knows that they're going to work out. The fluidity on this roster and the mindset, I think, are what makes them deserving of that A grade. But what we've seen so far, even the way that they bounce back from their few losses has been unlike anything I've ever seen before in terms of how quickly they rebound for that. So I give them an A.
How about you, Alex?
I'm also going to go with an A. They've only had 2 games that they really got blown out. One Tampa game, and then that one game where Thomas Greiss turned into prime Dominic Hasek in that 4-1 win. It's been really close. Even last game, they had like almost 40 shots. It just, the Detroit goalies turn into something that they shouldn't be against Florida. The team looks really good. They've only played 16 games. They're currently sitting second, only 1 point behind Carolina. It's a fun time to be a Panthers fan, and I really think that Florida should be watching.
Yeah, I agree. I think they're the best story in South Florida sports right now. I know the Heat have been a roller coaster, and I think the Panthers are going to grab a lot of people's attention sooner than later. I want to be a little more critical, balance the scales a little bit. I'll go A minus. I want to see a little bit more out of the penalty kill unit, a little bit more consistency out of that unit. I think they've had a couple lapses here and there. And once the goaltending situation straightens itself out, I think the sky's the limit for this team in terms of offensively. So I'm going to give them an A minus. I want to see a couple minor improvements, but overall, the trajectory is really pointing up for the Panthers, and it's going to be an exciting stretch over these next few games to really see them hopefully kind of separate themselves from the lower teams in the division. With this whole realignment thing, the division race is going to be very interesting, I think, this year. But we're going to wrap things up. Want to thank everybody for joining us, and we're going to be back here next week with another show to recap the recent homestand for the Panthers. So tune in then. Thanks, everybody.